Welcome to the Spent the Rent podcast. I am your host, Patty Rose. My guest today is author and artist Victor Keith. Victor, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So this is really exciting. It's been a long time since I've had consistent in-person guests, and it's awesome to have you in studio. This is really cool. Before we get started, I wanted to give a couple of reminders about what's happening with the podcast. My goal when I started the Spent the Rent podcast was to spotlight the underrepresented of the 541 community. Here we are 5 years later. This is episode 187. And I've learned that the beauty of what I get to do is that I get to meet extremely interesting people and facilitate a conversation for a few flies on the wall who'd like to listen to it. So cheers to you flies. I appreciate all of you. If you're listening or watching and you would like to donate to the podcast, or even better, become a monthly sponsor, you can go to our website, which is STRPOD.com. And then a reminder also, the podcast is available on both audio and video format. Be sure to subscribe to YouTube, Spotify, Facebook, wherever you consume your podcasts. Awesome. Victor Keith, I wanted to have you on originally to talk about your book. And I got it right here. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Okay. But I wanted to kind of get to know you a little bit better first. So, one of the things, let's see. Oh, you told me that you would describe yourself as an artist and an author by mistake. Explain to me what you meant by that.
Okay. So I've been drawing my entire life, and art's one of those things that's always been there. So I've always considered myself an artist, but around 2010, I came upon a lot more, some real information really that just opened my head up to just reality, I guess I should say. So at that time, my art took a turn and I started focusing on, like the title of my book's Race, Politics, and Religion. And, in order to do that, I had to go on to do research. I had to start watching documentaries, reading books, and listening to lectures and things like that. And I just got a wealth of information, and this new style developed in my art. But with all the information that I couldn't put down on paper as a drawing, it was overwhelming. So the next best thing was to put it in a book.
Right.
And that's how I accidentally became an author.
I wish. So I met you at the Black Cultural Celebration, and I just kind of decided, my partner and I were there, and we were like, we're just going to spend some money. We're just going to kick around some cash. The whole idea of the event was to expose the Eugene community to unknown or lesser known minority owned business owners. Right. And so it was really neat. And I got to meet a lot of different people. I bought some barbecue sauce. I bought your book, and I intended on jumping in it. I'm not a huge reader, I'll be the first to admit, but I did thumb through it, and I was really impressed right off the bat with just that your writing style is very kind of deadpan, kind of blunt. Mm-hmm. And so I was a fan immediately, and I will consume it. It's going to take me some time. One of the things that intrigued me about you was your blunt, almost deadpan demeanor, and I could sense that there's an honesty, a lot of humor too, but also a lot of pain. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yes, I'm definitely honest in the humor. I think I'm glad you caught that, because the subject matter that I touch on, I think it's a bit intimidating to people,
right?
And they don't realize that I actually have a sense of humor. I'm still the kid I was before I learned all this. I don't mind a good fart joke or whatever every now and then.
Sure.
But people don't necessarily assume that, and they.
Yeah, I mean, Let's talk a little bit about what kind of art. I mean, before we get into the book, let's talk about the art. So, artistic ambush is what you call your art, mm-hmm. And it's kind of almost comic book style. How would you describe it?
The same. Yeah, I do a bit of a comic book format where I break it down into sections so that an entire story can be told within this one image.
So one page,
right?
Every time, yeah. And right. It's a lot of kind of thought-provoking stuff. A lot of it, like your book, the Tyler book, Race, Politics, Religion. Mm-hmm. But a lot of it is kind of painting a picture. Like one that you're working on right now shows a guy getting pulled over, right, and then just the fear that ensues, and then the cop asking, why are you nervous? And it's like, why wouldn't I be nervous? Kind of thing. Right. And so it's just kind of painting a picture of, just that stress. It
sparks up those conversations because they're touchy subjects that people don't like to discuss. And then when they are discussed, it ends up in a debate. People have mixed emotions and things like that. And just to make the point, a lot of times people want to include their opinions, but when I draw these pictures, again, it's telling an entire story where you don't get the opportunity to interrupt.
Right. Which I've learned with my podcast is something that people have been grateful to be guests. I've been told this because they're like, I can show this to my family and they can hear me out and they don't get to interrupt me. And so that's kind of neat. That's what I get to do. I get to facilitate. Let's talk about your book, Race, Politics, Religion. You said that you kind of stumbled across making it because you weren't going to be able to get your point across just with that one page. So and I think any true artist is going to have many mediums anyways, and different outlets. Sometimes the more abstract is, an approach that day, that's what you're feeling. Other times you want to be more deliberate and more blunt, and so like we had talked about, and anyone that picks up your book, and I hope you do, it's on Amazon, that you have a very blunt approach. So talk about your book, talk about when you started writing it, and really deep dive into what it's all about.
Okay. Race, Politics, and Religion is actually my second book. The first book's called The Miseducation of the Christian, which still came out of the same awakening when I was just absorbing information from every angle. In learning the history, there were certain biblical topics that went right along with it, and I ended up going deep into the Bible. I was raised Christian, but like I said, this rabbit hole sent me deep into the Bible farther, and then Miseducation of the Christian ended up being my first book. Race, Politics, and Religion is specifically, I go from basically from the time of the Moors, the Egyptians, and the pyramids and everything, and it leads straight up to modern day issues within race, politics, and religion. I go strongly on all three subjects, and it's because there's a lot of debates. Again, people have a lot of things are obvious, and if people could listen, they would actually realize, or what, another angle I'll approach this with is that for the white readers, anyways, they come back to me and they give me a lot of feedback that they're grateful because a lot of people just don't have the opportunity to speak to a black person to get their entire perspective about the racism in America and the issues like that. So I made it a goal to touch on every single point that I could, and be as clear and as bold as I could to paint a picture. I don't speak for all black people.
You're right.
Right.
But that's like one of the biggest, that was like one of the first lessons for me about is that it's non-binary in the way that everybody doesn't agree or like,
right.
or it's not a binary where it's like, and I'm like, what do black people think about this? My buddy Jason Floyd, he's like, why don't you ask him? Like everyone thinks different shit. Just like, and so I don't know. It was and I was young, I'm saying, but it was something that was like, foot and mouth and light bulb moment at the same time. So I mean, it's hard, for people that haven't really consumed it. I really encourage them to check it out. I mean, do you think that with history, though, this is the one thing I know that one of the complaints that people would have is like, how do you know, where do you get your sources? I just want to ask, do you think that there is one true history, or is it all about theory and perception?
I mean, it's a little of both. As they say, that history is another, can be called his story.
Yeah.
But there's truth behind all of it. And a lot of times you have to sift through it. Some of it is perception.
Right.
And a lot of it, you have to put that perception aside because the facts are, it is what it is. And you can't deny it. Yeah. So you got to put that pride aside and kind of just accept it as,
Right. And I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is, I guess I don't think it's possible for everybody to always to agree on history. I do think, we've learned that history is basically written by the people that have succeeded in the battles typically. Yes. But that being said, like, I think what's been done wrong, especially in American education, is teaching history as in like there's a one way of looking at it. Because I think that we should really be looking at it like how different people perceive it. You know what I'm saying? The different perceptions of the way that things went down and are continuing to go down in a lot of cases. So what motivates you to dig deep for an understanding of history that you have found to be a more accurate depiction? I worded it this way on purpose because I said, that you have found it to be a more accurate depiction because first of all, I haven't consumed the whole book, so I don't want to sign off on it. I can't. That being said, I do support your doing it and writing it because I think that it's your interpretation. And I think that that's amazing. You know what I'm saying? Because I think that that's how we learn is like, oh, well, I wouldn't have looked at it that way. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So what is it that gives you that motivation to dig deep?
I think the entirety of it, just realizing how I was lied to on every single subject when it comes to history, the way that we were taught to perceive it and absorb it. And as Black people, we go through the school system learning about white history, and they don't tell us about the Black greatness. Even during Black History Month, they tell us about a few inventions here and there, and a couple of people, but they don't really go deep into what we had beforehand. People don't realize that. I mean, Timbuktu in Africa had the first university in the world.
Right.
The Moors traveled up into Europe and built civilizations, and during the Dark Ages, Africa was actually thriving.
Right.
So our history is totally just buried. So the motivation for me is just, learning more and more. It just builds my self-esteem. It builds my sense of pride, and that once you learn, you have to just keep, it's a rabbit hole. Right. I might say that a few times, but
no, yeah, it's totally true.
It is.
And there's a lot of stuff that's been, there's a lot of stuff now. There's access to just anything, any belief system, any confirmation bias and all that stuff too, which I think makes people nervous as well, because they don't know what to believe is truth. And I think that a lot of times it's important to just consume a lot of different types of things. Right. Yes. And so from different perspectives, but where do you think that your favorite source for the information, where's been something that you have found is really reliable?
In this modern day, a lot of people might not like to hear me say this, but YouTube has become an amazing source. When I started this in 2010, it wasn't like that. When I started learning, I was given a DVD of a lecture video from a friend, and I didn't really care to watch it. It was boring. Like I said, I was a gamer back then.
Sure.
And I put it in just to, when he asked for it back, I wanted to at least act like I watched it,
Sure.
And I'm telling you, 5 minutes into it, I was glued.
Right. Right.
And my life changed from there. The original question, I'm sorry.
Oh gosh, I lost it. It was off the cuff. Yeah. Let's move on. There's a topic I want to discuss, and I think we're kind of hinting at it. I want to talk about how different Americans look at ancestry. I know I've been doing my ancestry.com thing, and I think that this is something that I wanted to discuss, because I don't think that people really grasp how different it is for people of different backgrounds as Americans, how they look at ancestry. And it's obvious. Obviously, so for me, my story is, my mom's side traces all the way back to Waterford, Ireland, and it's for generations in Ireland. And then it was earlier than I thought. So it's about the 1850s that they migrated to Massachusetts. Pretty cliche. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Pretty cliche. And then my dad's side, I was always under the impression German, turns out Hungarian, which is, the next door neighbor or whatever, a couple right there in that same region. But, I have this experience where I celebrate the Ellis Island story, and I celebrate these things, right, that are like part of the American story and what makes America what it is. But I just don't think a lot of people understands that obviously when your lineage would be in slavery, that presents another way of looking at things, and another, it's people like always want to say like, why do you hate America? And it's like, well, I could start a list, right. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not about, do I hate America? It's like, I'm questioning, does America hate me?
Right.
And so I just wanted to hear your input on, first of all, how you look at ancestry, how you look at your ancestry. Have you ever dug into that at all? Have you kind of tried to find your own personal ancestry, or is it?
That's actually on my list for like next month.
Sure.
Yeah. I'm on it. Yeah.
Well, then we'll have to have you back on. But as of right now, you probably know a little bit. There's spoken story, maybe not. I don't know.
I've heard things from my family, but it doesn't go.
It's not that far.
It doesn't go far. Yeah, just a couple of generations back.
Yeah, and so it's interesting but that's the individual story. I think that there's a good understanding of the bigger picture about people, like that I'm sure that those stories. Tell me. What does that make you think when I talk about that with ancestry? I'm sure that that's something that I want to hear, kind of as a Black American, the way that you look at that, like the way that you look at, and again, you're not speaking for everybody, but the way that you look at, is that something you've been having to battle with, like basically your whole life? Like, how do I view this? Where's my place?
I don't think that, for most of us, like I said, there's no, we know we came from Africa, but that's it.
Right.
And when we're sitting in school, we're learning about white greatness and white history, our parents, there's not really a sense of pride in working the fields and everything, so you don't really get too much discussion about that.
Which, in some ways, that sucks that we don't. Not that people should be working in the field, but I wish we could take pride in that. too. You know, all of people's parts of the
Right.
big picture. It does, and not based on color or anything
Right.
like that, but just based on, I mean, unfortunately, money is gonna always exist.
Yeah, but I mean, I think because of that lack of knowledge, I think we have all, by default, we've embraced Africa as a whole, which it still sucks that we don't know where exactly we came from out of all the countries in Africa. So what was our culture? You know, what was our there's a lot of different cultures in Africa, you know, so we can't just narrow it down to one. But like I said, because all of it was stripped from us, we get to embrace all of it.
Yeah.
And
And
in this new,
everybody, and you know, and all people, right?
right. And in this new day, this is really empowering, you know, because again, like I just said, they learning as an adult that Africa had colleges and streetlights and some everything else is, you know, it would be great to know the closer, you know, where we came from, the genealogy and things like that. So yeah, that's one of those things that I just got to do. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting, and I mean, in America, there's basically three stories, right?
Mhm.
There's the immigrant experience, or generations that pass from that, and then there's the native, you know, indigenous people, and then
Mhm.
there's the slave trade. That's how
Right.
people got here,
Mhm.
you know, and so it's something that I don't know how we get to a point, like, you know, with slavery, we're never going to get to a point where we're like, well, yeah, you know, it's like there should be something to be proud of with that. Like
Right.
that's a fucking it's a
Right.
painful thing, like, you know, and there's nothing good that comes of it. And you know, I saw something one time though that was really inspiring about the immigrant experience, and it was an Asian American man. He had just gotten citizenship. He had been citizen for a short time, right? And so he grew up and lived in a different world, but then he came to America, and the question was asked to him. It was like, do you feel like you take on all of the ills of your country even before you were there? And he's like, absolutely. You don't get to have all the good without the bad. You know,
Right.
we all own it. You
Mhm.
know what I'm saying? And so that, I mean, in the slavery issue, he has an outside perspective on that.
Mhm.
I don't think that it's something that you can ask a black person, like, I want you to figure out your ownership of this. It's like, how about go fuck yourself?
Right.
You know, like, but I don't know. It's an interesting thought for me, but
Yeah.
I do think that we're making progress as a culture, because I do think people are actually starting to listen to each other a little bit more.
They are.
Some, you know, and that's been inspiring, and things like this. I mean, sometimes I hate the conversation when you're talking, for me, from a white person's perspective, where I don't want to make it. You know, we live in a very, very white dominant area, like as
Yeah.
far as population. So there's not a ton of opportunity to have a lot of experience for people to have friends that are
Right.
you know, African American. And so sometimes it feels like that's the only thing you get asked about, and like you have to be the, you know, you
Yeah.
know, I'm sure that
Yeah.
shit gets tiring.
Oh, it happens, but I as far as living here, and first I'll say that Oregon is great. Growing up in Mississippi, um, I came here on vacation in 2010 and decided to stay. You know, and that's my first day here. There was a white guy in, was it Morning Glory?
Mm-hmm.
You know, schooling me about Black history at random, and I'm like, wait, me, you know, seriously? And he sent me across the street to Smith Family Bookstore. And was, you need to check out their African American section, and it was amazing. Like you
Wow.
don't find that in Mississippi. But then, as far as like when the Black Lives Matter thing and all that happened, here there's a whole lot more support from white people who want to get over it, and they know that the way to get over it. Sorry,
You're good.
they know that the way to get over it is to own up, address it, and talk about it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so, and they do what their responsibility is. When there's injustices, they get out and they speak against it,
Right.
because Black people have been saying treat us right for years and it's not
Forever.
working,
Sure.
and they don't listen to us. So it comes up to white people. It's your responsibility to talk to the other white people and get them to, you know.
And that was something that, because this is something I've had a lifelong battle with. I'll be the first to admit it. When I was a kid, there was I just lived in my, like, my circle, my bubble.
Right.
And then I talked to you off air about this, and I want to bring it up. So for me, like, there was a lot of the education of Black experience in America came from, like, Chuck D from Public Enemy, right? Right. So I'm listening to rap music in the early 90s, 89, 90, 91. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is an experience that these people are having that is very different than my experience in America.
Right.
Right. And I was growing up in Salem, Oregon, and that was happening. What they're talking about is like Chicago, you know. And so I, at first, at 10 years old, I was like, this is actually super interesting. And I didn't think about, like, I didn't think about myself in it. I thought about, like, oh my gosh, your experience. Then Tupac came along, and for me, and this isn't about Tupac, this is just about my surroundings, but all my friends started being like, wait a minute, I'm gonna be this. you know, and
Yeah.
I'm talking about white friends, and they're like, all of a sudden they start acting like gangsters and shit, and I just did not like it, right? So I had like a hard time with gangster rap early on. I'm like, I don't want to
Okay.
embrace this shit. And it was, and also that's when I was coming into my own identity as a young man, 13, 14, 15. And so I don't know, it was really interesting, but I was super inspired early on by people like Public Enemy, Chuck D. I mean, I think that he's been somebody that's been preaching about harmony and unity and all that stuff. And if anybody actually consumed it, they would realize that he's like one of the most brilliant, like,
Oh yeah.
spokesperson people for everybody, you know. And so I don't know. It's kind of, I don't know where I was going with that, but I just wanted to talk about that, dude, because I know the ancestry is difficult and I don't know where we go. Everyone always talks about like, when are we going to think about the future, not the past? And it's like, we haven't talked about the past yet. That's the issue,
Right.
you know? So I think we're making progress by doing that. 2020 was big and it exposed a lot. And I see the language changing with policing. I know that in Springfield, I had the police chief on the podcast, and we talked about de-escalation training, and that's for all Americans so that the rules are the same for everybody, you know? And then the language, I mean, they're enforcing bias in Springfield now. Like they're actually charging people for bias, which is
Really?
that's a big change.
Okay.
That's a big change.
Okay.
You know, so there's some significant moves happening because and you know, and I think we can attribute some of that to those marches, even though, you know, the handling of it was a disaster by the Springfield police. It also created a conversation. The police chief retired. I got shit for saying he resigned. The old chief retired and the new chief was brought in, and I'm so far I'm giving him a good you know, good grade from what I've seen so far. But
nice.
We haven't had a tragic incident yet,
right?
And so when that happens, that's how you'll know how it's handled. But
yes,
I have faith. So I looked at your art, I peeked inside your book, and I glanced at your YouTube channel, and I saw that you had mentioned the highly controversial black Israelite theory. And I know that this is a tough one, and I know that we're going to get some fun feedback. Would you be interested in talking about this?
Absolutely.
Okay, so this will give people more of an understanding. Now, this, if anybody's wondering, you know, everyone has an opinion on this, even though they don't know what they're talking about. So Kanye and Kyrie Irving. Kanye, in my opinion, is one example. He's out there. He's out left field. I've never been a Kanye guy. Kyrie, I'm a Celtics fan. So Kyrie and I have a little bit of a basketball hatred going on. But as a man, I think he's misunderstood. I'm not defending his actions, not defending what he's talking about. But I think that his whole thing is that he wants people to understand that you shouldn't believe, and I'm giving him some tremendous credit here that maybe not be deserved, but you shouldn't believe what you know is true just because other people think it's true. That doesn't make it real.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? That's one area that he had brought this up. He had recommended a documentary. I've chose not to watch it personally because I've been told, I asked a friend of mine and his input said, I don't remember the title. Do you remember the title of the documentary?
Oh goodness.
Yeah, but anyway, so he shared it. He shared a post about it, and I chose not to watch it because I was told. I asked a friend of mine. I said, "What do you think? Should I like to, you know, challenge myself?" And he's like, "Well, you have to be kind of careful because your brain. You can't take something out of your brain, and I don't know if it's necessarily a reliable source. That whole documentary. I haven't watched it.
Okay,
but I wanted to know more about this theory, so it's fine. So explain to me what the Black Israelite theory is, and we'll go from there.
Okay. So, where do I begin?
Yeah.
And I want to say that first of all, mentioning Kyrie and Kanye, that the reason that Kanye got in trouble and why I would not connect myself with his comments is because what he did is he said he was about to go at DEFCON 3 on a bunch of Jews, something like that. Now you just initiated a threat. You know you can't
violence,
say that.
Unacceptable.
Yeah,
unacceptable.
Yeah,
you know, and he knows what the language was going to do.
Right. Now, as far as Kyrie sharing the video, okay, the thing about the Israelites is, according to the Bible, God has one chosen people. They are the only ones who are going to get into heaven. Everyone else is going to burn. It says it in Matthew, God's going to take the sheep in one hand, the goats in the other, and the sheep are going to be placed in heaven and the rest are going to be thrown into the fire. It's pretty cut and dry. That's all there is to it. There's numerous verses throughout the Bible where God says that the Israelites are my chosen people. This is a book to the Israelites. It says you are above all nations. It says the Israelites are gods. And again, it says over and over that the Israelites are the only ones that God will bless, and the Israelites are the only ones that God will punish. So these Israelites, what they're doing is they've identified that, oh, if we're the chosen people, then we better get on it, so they basically, oh boy, like, how do I want to approach this?
We got time.
Let me go to my cheat sheet here.
Sure.
Okay. So a lot of people think, well, Jesus said that Jesus came for everybody and this and that. But again, it says numerous times, Jesus actually said in Matthew, when the woman came saying, I need you to heal my daughter. Jesus said, no, my blessings are only for the Israelite. Who am I to give their blessings to the dogs?
This is in the this is in the New Testament.
This is the New Testament.
Okay.
Jesus said, he called the woman a dog. He said, my blessings don't go to the dogs. And she said, well, don't the dogs get the crumbs from their masters as well? And because she knew she accepted her place as a dog, Jesus went on and blessed her and healed her daughter. It's like I said, over and over and over, the Bible expresses that this is not for anyone else. And then when it comes to who all gets into heaven, while these missionaries are going around the world telling everybody that it's for everybody, the Bible specifically says that only 144,000 will be welcomed into heaven. That's 12,000 from each tribe of Israel. And everyone else is either going to hell or they will become servants in heaven. And in order to get those,
which is not the heaven that we've been painted.
Right. So I think a lot of people are just upset because of the idea that they've dedicated their entire lives to Christ and to the Bible and everything. And when you tell them that it's not for them, no matter what, they're not going to take that lightly,
Right.
To think that their grandparents may have gone to church their entire lives, they may have done good deeds and everything, but because they are not the Israelites, they're not going to get into heaven. And then when you ask who are the Israelites, and the ones here anyways, the Black Hebrew Israelites that you see on the streets and everything in America, the reason they've determined themselves to be God's chosen people is because of Deuteronomy 28. When they continued to break God's laws, God expressed that he would send them back into slavery because they broke his commandments. It said they would be destroyed as a people. They would have to serve their enemies. They would take loans from their enemies, but they would have nothing to loan out to those people. Says they will go into slavery with an iron yoke around their necks. And as you know from the images from American slavery, Black people are the only ones who have been in slavery with those large iron yokes with the spikes and everything on them, so they can't run away through the trees. And then lastly, it says that they would be sent into slavery on ships. And as you know, again, nobody else in history has gone through slavery on ships, have an iron yoke around their neck, and they would be destroyed as a people, until the end. Black people in America are the only ones who really fit that description. Actually, the Blacks, Natives, and Hispanics. So the Israelites, I'm not an Israelite. I don't identify as an Israelite.
Exactly. Like I think that, and you are also an atheist.
I am an atheist.
Right. And so when you say that this is what's written, you're not saying that this is God's, this is the way that it is.
No,
you're saying that this is the story. This is the story that people want to pick and choose the pieces that they want,
whether you want to read the Bible or not, that's what it says.
Right.
It's not me. And if you're calling the other people racist for seeking out that, this Israelite thing, I mean, you really have to be mad at God or be mad at the Bible.
Right.
Because I mean, they're not taking, I've studied them thoroughly. From what I can find, they're not taking anything out of context. Like I said, my book, The Miseducation of the Christian, is loosely based around this. I definitely, in the end of it, I go into the Israelite situation and explain that some. But
so now with the Black Israelite theory, though, it's a theory that the current people that live in Israel they're imposters. That is actually what is in this theory, right? Could you explain that a little bit? This is where it gets a little bit heavy, what I mean? And I'm not, again, I'm not saying that we're not sitting here saying that we're pushing this. I'm just saying that this is what is being discussed.
Right. And let's see, in Revelations, it states that those who say they're, beware of those who say they're Jews and are not, they're actually the synagogue of Satan. And I think that's another thing that gets on people's nerves and says that they're anti-Semitic when they express this.
And it can, the wrong person that gets that information, because when, Dave Chappelle said it pretty damn good when he said there's two words in the English language you should not say together, and it's the Jews.
The Jews.
And it's true. And I think that sometimes this whole, I don't know, oh my God, it's difficult to word this, but there's people living in Israel that are completely innocent to whatever they're even attacking. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like that it's just dangerous because we have so many people that are, like, how do I say? Okay, so first of all, what is the goal, right? Is the goal for someone like Kyrie? You can't speak for Kyrie, but what do you assume is the goal by pushing this theory? Is it going to mean that the African Americans that live here today should actually be the ones that are in Israel and given that promised land?
As far as Kyrie, I think that he's like on the same mission I was. He learned some information that was like, oh my goodness, I've never heard anything like this, and just decided to share it.
Right.
You know, I don't think he was
totally.
He was just sharing the information.
Right. And I just wonder sometimes though about that. If that's the strategy, I wonder if that's actually being written by white supremacists. Because it's like, you know how we can do this. I know how we can get a white America. You know what I'm saying? Right. So I mean, I don't know. I don't know. And that's just, I just don't trust anything. Like, it's like, and I think people want an answer for why there's pain and misery and all that stuff in the world, why people treat people, why there's abhorrent people in the world that don't care about if, you know, not just your feelings. They don't care if you live or die. You know what I'm saying? And we want answers to that. So it's much easier if you can call it satanic or if you can call it all this stuff. I just have such a hard time with it. I mean, I was raised Lutheran, which I joke is diet Catholic.
Okay.
And so the one of the big things that I was always turned off on when it comes to religion is how it's not all inclusive, how people, like you had said, it's written in the Bible. It's written in the Bible that it's like, oh, there's only certain chosen ones, you have to do these things. And it's just like, dude, I can't live my life thinking like that. I can't I can't live my life thinking that if you don't do what this person says, then you're not good. And like you're saying, it doesn't even matter if you do it. What's good. That's literally what it says.
No, you're not getting it anyway. And I mean, and really, what it comes down to is, and it's explaining who they were as well. That the Bible says over and over that these are black people. So if you're not like near my complexion, it's kind of like you check yourself off the list. You know, go on. Do what you feel, because it says over and over. Anybody of any importance that it mentions, who are all Israelites as well. Yeah, it specifically says that they were black, as well as Jesus. Who sprang out of the tribe of Judah, and it's the tribe of Judah who went in on ships and everything else. So that's the other theory, is that the African Americans are the closest living relative to Jesus. But it's a lot to take in. If you don't fit that description and you're a Christian or you believe in the Bible, you know, it's to think you've been going to church your entire lives. And most people, they've been going their entire lives and they know about 5% of the Bible, you know. Right. And these Israelites, while people are hating on them, they're actually living by the law. They're not blowing off the Old Testament. You know, they're I'm sure there's a lot of them that aren't, but
sure, they're human beings.
Right. They acknowledge all the laws of the Old Testament and they acknowledge they're still supposed to follow them. Whereas in Christianity, it's more of church is more spiritual entertainment, and you don't have to follow all the rules. You just have to accept Jesus into your heart, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, I had a conversation with one of my customers who's from Saudi Arabia, and I asked him one time, I was like, this was tough to ask. I was like, have you ever thought, like, what if ISIS was right? You know, and it took a long time to get. No, it took a long time to get there. We had a serious rapport. Yeah, and it was on. I mean, people are like, "What?" And no, dude, he was so stoked that I would actually have the balls to ask that question. Yeah. You never know how that's going to go down. Right. And it sounds like I was being a dick. No, it was like I was talking to him. We had a great rapport. I was telling him stuff. He asked me straight up. He said, after 9/11, this was on 9/11. This was last September this year, 20 years after September 11th, 2001. And wait, and no, 2 years ago. So, and he said, did you have hatred for people like me? And I said, well, hatred, no. Fear, sure, because there's this propaganda machine, and it took me a while to do my own research before I realized that there's victims. It's not like, I mean, this is going to make me look ignorant, but it's the facts. It's just the way that I came to that conclusion, that there's people that are being victimized by ISIS, right? First you're thinking like, oh, this is the ideology in the Middle East. No, it's not. No, it's not. They're victimized by these people. So when I asked him that, he said, oh yeah, I've definitely have thought that. And I'm like, really? He's like, I almost joined up. I'm like, really? And he said, you know, the only reason I didn't was because the hypocrisy, because they were raping women. They were drinking alcohol. They were smoking cigars. They were playing music, rap music, American music. Wow. And so they're not living the code, right? They're not living the life. And that's what you're talking about with these people that you had told me off air, like with the Israelites, that they have to live off the grid because their whole point is not to be living with, they can't be coordinating with people, right? Isn't that
right? That's what the Bible says, for them to separate.
Right.
It says to separate from everyone else. And that goes interracial mixing and everything else. You know, you're not supposed to do that because you are my holy people. And if I don't want my blessings to go to these other people. So
right. Now you posted a video on YouTube, and your YouTube channel is it youtube.com/artistic ambush?
Victor Keith.
Okay, Victor Keith. And I really encourage anybody to look it up, and I also encourage them to read the comments, because one of the reasons that I felt comfortable inviting you on into my home to do this conversation is because the way that you responded to criticism, you know, and or just critiques. I don't whatever. I mean, it's semantics, but you know, because there was pushback. And I want to hear what you have to say about that. I mean, because you definitely didn't attack in my mind, but you just explained that this is what my perception of this is, and I'm just trying to explain it, you know. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Now, this is where we're at with this in this country, is that there and in this world, it's not an American problem, it's a global problem. Populism, you know, and what's happened, you know, even with, well, I'll use the Russian meme stuff as an example. Everybody's like, well, that's totally against the rules. And I'm like, it's not against the law. It's not against the law to put out misinformation.
No.
Right. And so it's up to us as individuals to be educated, and so that we can see what is bullshit and what is true. And I know there's a lot of people that are going to listen to this that might think, oh, this is misinformation because they're lazy. You know, you know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying that this is all. We're not answering all of the, you know, like we're just sitting here. You read up on stuff, and I think in your book, people could understand that it's like, this is just your perception. They get to learn or discover these things through the lens that you saw, and that's the beauty of it, you know.
Right. And I'll never tell you that I'm confident that I'm 100% right or anything. I can be proven wrong at any minute. You know, I'm very outspoken. I'm confident. But you can change my mind tomorrow. Just show me the evidence.
Me too.
You know,
100%.
When it comes to the YouTube comments and the backlash, it's only Christians who have something to say. And basically, I can respond with a Bible verse from their Bible. You know, and again, don't shoot the messenger, man. I'm just telling you what your pastor didn't. You know, that just is.
Or did, and they ignored it.
Or they didn't ignore it. Yeah.
Because there is, I mean, you know, obviously. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was only from Christians that you got criticism?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's I can safely say it's only Christians that give the negative criticism. Yes.
Yeah. You know, what's an interesting thing to me about what is it, the people that believe, the American Christians that believe that they need, well, I mean, the destruction of Israel is like literally in the Bible as well, right? Like that has to happen for Jesus to come back. And so this is something that I think is so, I shouldn't laugh, because I just think it's wild how you have these evangelicals, that's what it is, that go to Israel and they're like, can I get you a pillow? Would you like a cookie? You know, because they literally are like, you have to be destroyed in order for me to get my way. And so they're like, so you guys are just so amazing. I just love you. And it's like, what the fuck is going on? Like you cannot have people that are making legislation, you know, that are writing legislation that have these beliefs. Right. Like you just cannot. Like, first of all, the separation of church and state. But like this is literally what people believe, that the world Israel has to be destroyed so that Jesus can come back to Missouri. That's not. I know that they, or whatever. Is it Missouri?
No.
But I mean, like whatever bullshit. But like you know, that part I'm fabricating. But they do believe that has to happen. That's a step that has to happen. I had a question that I'm going to say now before we get too far off. Blair Hickok, shout out to Blair. She wanted to ask, can you say the YouTube channel name again? It's Victor Keith. It's youtube.com/Victor Keith. Right. So it's pretty simple to find that one. And the criticism, the responses were great. It was a great read, and the video is really interesting. And there's a way more in-depth, deep dive into the Black Israelite theory. I just think that I mean, what was your take when you saw Kanye though? Kanye went pretty damn far with it. I don't even know what the hell. You know, I mean, and you're watching it and you're like, I mean, I don't know.
I don't know if he wants attention. I don't know, because, you know, I mean, understand, he has the mega church, doesn't he? Kanye's got his his own Christian church, claiming to be an Israelite. And it's, no way, dude. Yeah. No, he's not serious.
I just wonder if it's a big troll. Like, you know how like
looking for attention.
I don't know if you ever saw, what's his face? Joaquin Phoenix, that he did the troll. Like he did this thing where he was like, I'm ending my acting career and I'm going to become a rapper. And it was like a complete troll. Like it was literally him and Casey Affleck, Ben Affleck's brother. Casey Affleck and him had this idea. It was Casey Affleck's idea. And he's like, I'll pay you. We'll do it. We'll follow you around. I sometimes think it's like performance art.
Right.
and he's gonna be like, see, these motherfuckers can get duped.
Right.
And you know, and I'm like basically, and I don't know. I mean, I don't want to
I-
give him any credit. I think he's a lunatic, but
I think Kanye's serious though.
yeah,
I think he's just crazy.
I think so too. I think so too. You know, and I think Kyrie is a young man that, you know, that has a platform that's massive. And so I don't know. I mean,
but with this is the thing, we're robbed of all of our history. We don't know anything about ourselves, and this is major. You know, to open up the Bible and find out that everybody follows, and to find out that, wait a minute, while they stole my history and told me I was nothing, I'm actually God's chosen people.
yeah,
Black people aren't going to just let this get swept under the rug. You know, there's definitely going to be some to address this head on.
yeah. Okay, that gets me to kind of like, what is the goal? I mean, if that's the goal, it's like, where do we as Americans go from here? Or, you know, with that information. Because if the goal is about equality and all that, because okay, so as an atheist, as an American, as an atheist, you don't subscribe to that shit. So like, what is you're not pushing it, but I mean, what do you see as a product? How do I word it? I mean, I just don't understand what the goal is for a guy like Kanye. I just don't know what, like, pushing. Like you said, he's just sharing the information.
Right.
But you know, I was in Boston and I saw like outside of Boston, what do you call it? The square, basically, where all the speaker, you know, everyone goes to. I mean, it was basically created by the Puritans so that they could have religious freedom, so that they could squash other people's religions. Okay. But this area where all these religious people will go and speak, and everybody goes there and gathers, and they had on the very outskirts of it, they had some Black Israelites, and it had like this pretty crazy imagery or wild imagery of, you know, the white Jesus is the devil and all this different stuff, and I was like, oh my god, you know, and
because would he not be the Antichrist if the Bible says that Jesus is a black man and they're showing you a picture of a white man? And actually, if his name wasn't even Jesus, we all commonly know there was no letter J back then, and you know, we've heard that. And people call him Yeshua, Yahweh, there's Yahweh. Yeah, there's different variations of his name. But if his name is not Jesus and you're calling him Jesus, and you're looking at a picture of a man that does not look like him, and they're preaching that Jesus says that heaven is for everyone, all you have to do is believe in me, that's nowhere near Christ. You know, it's the wrong name, the wrong image, and the wrong message.
Yeah. So both of your books are available on Amazon, correct?
Yes.
So what was the title of the misinformation or the
miseducation of the Christian?
Okay.
A quick guide to the manipulation of the Holy Bible.
Okay. And then the other one is Race, Politics, and Religion. And again, if you want to find those, you can just search. That's probably easier. I mean, actually, the first one's probably easier to find.
The miseducation of the Christian. Yes.
Yeah, it comes up because Race, Politics, and Religion. There's been a few. You know, I think, I don't know if it was it's the three things are sex, politics, and religion.
There aren't any books with that specific name, but it they dance around it so much that it
brings up different stuff.
Yes.
But if you can also search for Victor Keith as the author, and then I mean, I really encourage anybody, especially locally, you know, that wants to support what you're doing. And I think that, you know, take it as you want. I mean, you know, he's not trying to tell you like this is the only way to think. This is just your perspective, you know. And so I think it's really cool.
No, but I think that it needed to be said though, as far as the Israelite thing and why I push it. Like I said, people have so many opinions about it, and black people have no sense of pride. No, black people do have a sense of pride, but so much of it's been taken from us, and we don't know where we came from. I think it's important that not be hidden.
But that's where I have an issue though. Like that was one of the criticisms I read is like, if you don't believe it, you see a benefit to it, or, you know, or like the benefit to it because it would give. Are you saying when you say black people, you're talking about Americans or globally?
We say African Americans.
Okay.
This particular conversation.
Sure. That's where I'm just like,
I don't feel the need to push the topic. Now, everywhere that I said it in my books, when I talk about it, I make it clear that I'm an atheist as well.
Right.
So again, I'm not pushing this to encourage other people to go and become Israelites. You know, I'm only leveling the playing field because there's so many people who are speaking against it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm a big believer in freedom of speech, and meaning that I think that people need to be able to put information or put their take out there, and it's up to people to have better ideas.
Right.
That's what, you know, that's the way that it works. And so I think that, go ahead.
You know what? Yeah, let me say this too. Well, my goal and reason for pushing this as well, because as a former Christian, I spent a lot of years in church and was misled. So, and Christianity, when you step out on the street, people are always trying to recruit you. You know, Christians are constantly going on missions. They're filling the world with Christianity, you know. So I do think it's important for me to be a counter source also. just to put that other information, because if nobody else is telling you, the one thing that you're hearing the most is that more than likely you need to just believe in Jesus and accept him as your savior, when that's not the case, you know.
I don't know if it's not the case. I mean, in the way that I don't know if I would say that. I think my big thing is I don't want to. I mean, I guess it is if it's destructive for other people, but I think there is ways that people do it right, that do it like what I know in my heart of hearts is right, where they live a life of sacrifice, they live a life of service to others, and that kind of stuff. The ethos, you know, there's some people out there that, regardless of what you want to call it, they're doing God's work, you know, like and I believe that, and so I celebrate that. My thing is I don't want to buy into, and this might be considered. This is where the anti-Semitism stuff. I'm like, I don't want anything that's exclusive. I don't want to sign off on that. And that's not what America's about. Right. That's what the beauty of this country is. Yeah. is that in America, we have freedom from that. Whether, you know, there's a feudalistic, there's the conservative right that want to have this thing, but that's not. And there's people on the left too that want to create this new religion. I don't want to sound like Tucker Carlson saying it, but it's like this new way of looking at things. It's like, dude, whatever happened to, like, if you don't like me, go the other direction. Like, this is a big ass place. Like, I don't know. And so I don't know. I don't want to, I don't like it when it comes to religion, how I don't want to have to narrow it down. I want there to be other people with different beliefs so that I can not pick and choose, but like I can be inspired by some of their strategies. I don't need to be that, you know, and so I don't know. It's kind of interesting, but
whatever strategy leads you, or whatever belief system leads you to being a better person, I definitely don't stand in the middle of that. You know, if you're, I mean, I know people who got off of drugs because of white Jesus, and I'm not going to go up there and tell them that, look, the Bible says Jesus is black and you need to stop this. No. If that's keeping you off of drugs or whatever, then, you know, respect. I'm gonna run with that.
When you lose someone that you love too, and a lot of people are like, they're in heaven now. It feels pretty damn good to hear that, even though I know. So my mom was a lesbian.
Okay.
And she was the Sunday school teacher. And when it was about 93, 94, and I was with her because my mom was a single mom. Obviously, my parents were divorced because, I mean, she's a lesbian, and different reasons. Obviously, it just wasn't going to work. You know, they got married really young, and she was, I mean, she's bisexual. She was, you know, she's dated both. But I was with her, and she approached the head pastor of the church and our Lutheran church, our Diet Catholic church, and she said, I'm going to step down as the Sunday school teacher. And the pastor's like, why? And she's like, well, I'm going to come out that I'm going to live openly as I am as a lesbian woman. And so he said, why do you have to step down? And she said, well, I don't think our country is there yet. And I don't think our culture is there yet. I think we're making progress, but I don't think we're there yet. And I don't think it's my responsibility to be the one to teach a kid about it when a parent is going to have a different perspective, which, as much as I hate the idea that she had to do this, I admire her for it.
That's respectful. Yeah.
Because she was like, I'm not the one that gets to decide the way that a child is parented. You know, I'm not. And she had enough dignity and respect towards parents to give them that right. And she's like, that's not my place. The pastor was like, I really want you to think about this. I want you to stay on. I love you. You're amazing. My mom was one of the most kind, just loving people. So she's amazing with kids, had just the softest touch, you know, just in general. I mean, just the way she was incredible. Right. And so he wanted her to stay on. She said, I'll think about it. We go home. She's like, I don't know. She thought about it. She decided to step down. And I respect that, you know. I know in that moment, my faith was definitely, that was reliant on how that pastor responded to that. Yeah. You know, and any shred that I would have had later in life, that moment would have been a turning point. It was a turning point, and why I've always kind of preserved some faith. The quote that's kept me having faith of some form. I don't know if I necessarily subscribe to a book that's written by people. You know. But that being said, like, it's funny because it's from the Usual Suspects movie. It says the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world that he doesn't exist. And so that, I think, is like, well, shit, back to the drawing board when I hear that, you know. So well, you know, Victor Keith, it's an honor to talk to you. It's an honor to have you in my home. Artistic Ambush is your art. You can find that stuff on Facebook, Instagram. I think your Instagram's probably the best place. Yes. You know, because it really captures the one page. So Artistic Ambush. I like your DIY style. I noticed you had posted something, and you're very open about the behind the scenes stuff, and you had posted something about buying a stamp, and so that you have your image on a stamp, and you're like, it's just a lot more, it's affordable, and I can get my stuff out there.
Right.
You recently had all of your stuff stolen, is that right?
Yes.
A bunch of stickers and different things.
Yes, which was out of my car one night. And you wouldn't think as much a case of stickers, but I mean, it probably totaled about $700, something like that.
Yeah.
Had to lesson learned.
So if anybody, there's ways to donate, I'm sure, and you can find links if anybody wants to help you recover some of that. Not that you're asking. I'm the one putting that out there. There's ways to reach out. We got some comments we're gonna take real quick.
Okay.
Early on in the thing, it was Ronell Hardy. That must be a friend.
Hey, yes.
Yeah, he said, "Good luck, brother. I'm here." Later on, also added, "Great interview, brother. Keep them coming." So that's cool. And then we got one from is it Ruck Patel? Rouge. Okay. And he said, "Love you, bro." So you got some people tuning in.
Nice. Thank you guys for watching. I'm glad to see you here. Right on.
Kimberly Redicop just wanted to say hey. So hey, appreciate you guys for watching. And you can subscribe to the Spent the Rent podcast wherever you're listening to this or watching this. I always want to encourage people to tune in on Spotify because that's where I just love the way that it is presented there. Apple does a few things to kind of make it not look as cool. So Blair Hickok says great episode. Thank you so much, Blair. And then Dewan Lamar, great to see you. So you got some support. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Last question. The Black Cultural Celebration. I want to talk about that. What that meant to you. I know that there's politics behind it. I don't give a shit about that. You know what I'm saying? I don't give a shit about the organizers,
right? And
all that kind of stuff. Like, kudos to them for putting it on. First of all, I'm not trying to. When I say I don't give a shit, I'm like, I don't. That's not what it's about. That's not what. It's not about them. It's about the individuals that got to present their stuff there. That the whole point. What did that day mean? I mean, was that something that I'm sure that you met a lot of cool people.
Oh, absolutely. And then with my art and my books, it's total conversation pieces, so it's like there's people enjoying themselves and they stop and talk to me, once they see the material, they give me their perspectives and opinions. But it's great because it's just all positivity. One, it's like we don't get to connect with a lot of other Black people around here. You think that we're only 1%.
Yeah.
So to see all of us together and happy and positive, and empowered and uplifting, that's very, very important.
And what I've learned and rolling your eyes and biting your tongue and that kind of stuff, right? Like it's like this is how I feel about the Democratic Party as a whole. We are a big damn umbrella, right? So we're gonna have people that we may not just be like, but at the same time, that's my crew. You know what I'm saying? And so I would imagine that that's the experience because I saw it. I saw people that were like, this guy's driving me crazy, and yet everybody, it was such a beautiful day, and I think that in some ways the Black Cultural Celebration is better than the Juneteenth celebration because Juneteenth is cool. You know what I'm saying? But I think the idea that it's just, we're talking about that, to me, is about the future. Whereas Juneteenth still is talking about some of. I don't want to be like, we shouldn't talk about the past. It matters, but I just think that the Black Cultural Celebration was a better day.
That's an excellent point. Yes,
and I mean, breaking the chains is an amazing thing and all that stuff. But I was watching something the other day. We got to get out of here. But I was watching this thing about Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, and it really said something. He said Prince Harry said something. He's I don't want to use the word woke, but he said something about how he's like in British history, that there's all this colonialism and there's always these stories about them like ending these things like the slave trade, and that's when they want to be celebrated for ending the slave trade. It's like, motherfucker, you started it.
Yeah,
like that's like literally like if I cut you and I hand you a Band-Aid and you're like, hey, thanks,
thank you,
thank you for the Band-Aid, because I'm bleeding. I don't know how that happened, and so hey, I mean, these conversations are designed just to give different perspective, and so I want everybody here to have these conversations with each other. You know what I'm saying? And I want people to understand, my white friends, that you can have these conversations if you show a good heart. People are going to hear you out if you show that you can say cringy ass shit.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, say your cringy ass shit, just get it out of your chest, get it off of your chest. And that's what I've been able to do by having this podcast. And I appreciate it so much. Excellent. So Victor Keith, thank you so much. Find Victor Keith on Amazon. That definitely watch that video about the Black Israelite stuff. It's really good. Do you know the title of it offhand? they'll be able to find it on your YouTube channel pretty easily. I'm
Yep,
sure.
I'm pretty new. I only have about 4 videos. So
Okay.
I posted a new one today, by the way. You should check
Oh,
it
cool.
out.
I will.
Yeah.
So, hey, thank you so much for listening. Make sure to subscribe. If you'd like to donate to the podcast, you can go to strpod.com, strpod.com. And you can right there, you can become a monthly sponsor, or you can just do a one-time donation. And that helps me greatly. I'm trying to get the word out. I'm trying to advertise with this. So that's how the only way I'm going to be able to do it is if I get support from you guys. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you to Victor Keith. And yeah,